Have you ever wondered if trusting God could bring clarity when life feels confusing? I think we've all been there at some point, feeling lost, unsure of what's next, and wondering if we're even on the right path. For me, one of those moments was when I felt like I was stuck in a rut, unsure of what career path to take. I had so many options, but none of them seemed to be the right fit. It was a super frustrating and overwhelming time. But in the midst of all that uncertainty, I realized that I had a choice to make, to let fear and doubt take over, or to trust God and His plan for my life. As I began to pray and seek guidance, I realized that trusting God wasn't just about getting the right answer, but about surrendering my need for control and trusting that He had a plan that was so much bigger and better than anything I could imagine. And that's what I want to talk about today, the importance of trusting God when life feels unclear. Trusting God is not just a Sunday school cliché, it's a real, active choice that we have to make every day. When we choose to trust God, we're choosing to believe that He's got our backs, that He's working everything out for our good, and that He's bigger than any problem or uncertainty we're facing. It's not about being naive or ignoring the difficulties of life, it's about having faith that God is sovereign and that He's always working towards our good. So, why is faith and trusting God so important when navigating life's uncertainties? Well, for one, it gives us a sense of peace and hope that goes beyond our circumstances. It reminds us that we're not alone and that God is always with us, guiding us and directing us. It also helps us to focus on what's really important, our relationship with God, rather than getting caught up in the chaos and uncertainty of life. When we trust God, we're not just trusting in His plan, we're trusting in His goodness, His love, and His character. We're saying, God, I don't understand what's going on, but I trust that you're good and that you're working everything out for my good. And that's a game changer. Because when we trust God, we're not limited by our own understanding or abilities, we're opening ourselves up to the infinite possibilities and resources that He has to offer. In the Bible, there are so many examples of people who trusted God in the midst of uncertainty, from Abraham, who was willing to leave his comfortable life behind to follow God's call, to David, who trusted God to deliver him from the lion and the bear. And in each of these examples, we see that trusting God wasn't just about getting the right outcome, it was about deepening their relationship with Him and being transformed by their experiences. One of my favorite stories is about a woman named Esther, who found herself in a very uncertain and scary situation. She was a Jewish woman living in a pagan kingdom, and she was being asked to risk her life to save her people from persecution. But instead of panicking or trying to take control, she chose to trust God and seek His guidance. And because of her faith and trust, she was able to save not just her people, but an entire nation. Trusting God is not just about getting the right outcome, it's about the journey itself. It's about the growth, the transformation, and the deepening of our relationship with God that happens when we choose to trust Him. And that's something that I think we can all learn from. Because, let's be real, life is uncertain, and we're all going to face tough times. But when we choose to trust God, we're choosing to rise above our circumstances and to focus on what's really important, our relationship with Him. Of course, trusting God isn't always easy. There are times when we feel like we're walking in the dark, and we have no idea what's going on. There are times when we're tempted to doubt God's goodness or to feel abandoned by Him. But even in those moments, we have a choice to make, to trust God or to trust our own understanding. So, how do we overcome those struggles and trust God even when it's hard? Well, for one, we need to remind ourselves of God's character and all the times He's come through for us in the past. We need to surround ourselves with people who are encouraging and supporting us in our faith. And we need to be intentional about seeking God's guidance and wisdom through prayer and Scripture. But most importantly, we need to remember that trusting God is a journey, not a destination. It's something that we need to choose every day, even when it's hard. Because the truth is, trusting God isn't just about getting the right outcome, it's about the transformation that happens in our hearts when we choose to trust Him. I remember a time when I was going through a really tough season, and I felt like God was silent. I was crying out to Him, but I wasn't hearing anything back. It was a really frustrating and lonely time. But one day, as I was praying, I felt this gentle whisper in my heart, "Trust me, I've got this." And in that moment, I realized that I had a choice to make, to trust God or to trust my own understanding. And because I chose to trust God, I was able to rise above my circumstances and to see the bigger picture. That's the power of trusting God. It's not just about getting the right outcome, it's about the transformation that happens in our hearts when we choose to trust Him. It's about the peace, the hope, and the freedom that we experience when we surrender our need for control and trust God to work everything out for our good. So, what does it mean to trust God in uncertain times? It means choosing to believe that He's sovereign, that He's good, and that He's always working towards our good. It means surrendering our need for control and trusting Him to guide us through the uncertainty. And it means being willing to take the next step, even when we can't see the whole path ahead. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways. Trusting God is a choice that we need to make every day, even when it's hard. It's not just about getting the right outcome, but about the transformation that happens in our hearts when we choose to trust Him. And it's not just about us, it's about the impact that we can have on others when we choose to trust God. As you move forward, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on your own trust journey. Are there areas where you're struggling to trust God? Are there areas where you're choosing to trust Him, even when it's hard? Take some time to journal, to pray, and to seek guidance from God and from others. And remember, trusting God is a journey, not a destination. Finally, I want to invite you to share your own experiences with trusting God in the comments below. How has trusting God impacted your life? What challenges have you faced, and how have you overcome them? I want to hear from you. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more uplifting content that will encourage and inspire you to trust God in the midst of life's uncertainties.